Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the Garden Cinema and to our 9th, I think, industry panel. If some of you have been to our industry panels before, you know what to expect. To new faces, welcome. We've had panels focusing on various aspects of the film industry, from animation to film festivals, from costume design to feature film production. And tonight we will be talking about, very specifically, screenwriting, directing. It was initially going to be just screenwriting, but our guests tonight are both screenwriters and directors, so it adds an extra layer of interest to the subject matter. Both Daniel and Luna's latest films have been shown here at the Garden Cinema. Acre and Hoard, which I guess some of you will probably have seen, and they're both really excellent films. So we're really delighted to welcome them here tonight. Big round of applause. Thank you so much, Daniel and Luna. So how these sessions go, they're very informal. It's a way for us to know a bit more about you individually as writers, as directors, and to know a little bit more about the craft of writing and directing. I'll ask a few questions and then open it up to our audience. So first of all, my question is specifically about both writing and directing your films. So Luna, to start with you, why did you want to do both? Why didn't you seek out, as a writer, you didn't seek out a director, and as a director, you didn't seek out a writer?
I think I'd just be really shy at directing other people's words, honestly. It's kind of a bit like dyslexia in a way that even when I read other people's scripts, I just don't have the ability to imagine them. And it feels very the mathematical part of my brain that I can't quite operate when I read other people's scripts. So that's probably one of the reasons. But another reason is that, you know, it takes so long to get anything off of the ground, like whether it be a short or a feature. And I'm quite a lazy person. So unless I'm obsessed with something, I can't spend and love that project and put all of myself into it. So for me, the only way that is if these are my stories or things that I love so much that I want to make move. Otherwise, I just won't be able to do it, really.
Thank you. And that's your first foray into feature filmmaking, am I right?
What do you mean?
That's your Hoard is your first feature film.
Oh, yeah, my first. Yeah.
And how did that come about as a director? Had you directed a number of shorts and then you thought, right, it's time to make a feature? Did the stars align and you had a script ready and you knew which producers to approach? How did that process happen?
Well, I couldn't afford to go to film school, so I just worked in retail, and I was constantly looking for schemes that I could apply to, and there wasn't really any schemes until I kept checking the Creative England website, and there wasn't a scheme yet, but I kept seeing that a lot of films that I liked were coming out of Creative England. This is before sort of like Lady Macbeth, and they got really big, but one called The Goob that I loved. And then all of a sudden one day I was checking for the millionth time, and Short Flicks, the scheme that I made my first short on, just appeared, and it was for underrepresented talent in the UK, and you didn't have to have a degree. They sort of facilitated a team around you, but it was a bit like Battle Royale for funding, like you said about iFeatures and Creative England stuff. And that's how I made my first short that did pretty well, and then that allowed me to make my second short, and then I got ghosted on my first, what was going to be my feature, and I was like, I'm going to kill myself. And then I wrote this other thing sort of out of venom, and I was going to leave it at the bottom of my bed before I topped myself, and everyone in the neighbours were going to be like, she was so sweet, how did she write such a disgusting thing? And I'd be laughing at everyone from up there like, well, ha ha ha, I told you so. And then out sort of popped Hoard, and we sort of pitched it to BBC in the way that it's going to be so guerrilla. This is COVID, but mind you, and then obviously it's not guerrilla at all, but it very much was a product of writing in that time period and space, and quite contained and delirium based, and yeah, it all happened quite fast, to be honest.
I hadn't thought of the COVID. I hadn't realised the I guess some of the shooting happened during COVID.
Yeah.
I hadn't put the two and two together. Thank you very much. Daniel, same question to you. What were your first steps into filmmaking, and how did you make the decision of writing and directing your own films?
I don't know where to start, really. I didn't really have any opportunities again. Like I grew up in a pretty strict religion. My family was pretty strict about that, so there was only certain things I was allowed to study. But part of me always wanted to tell stories. I was artistic like that, and got into music, into painting on the side, while I was studying, and just had an urge to do that. I wrote several scripts, stage plays at the time in Manchester, but didn't get anywhere. But there was no outlet for it. I would try and apply to local theatre groups, but no one was really interested. And iFeatures was the thing that sort of saved me. I applied for that several times. I had a script that I thought was pretty good as well. It was about I went to school with Harold Shipman's sons and sort of saw what happened through their eyes. So I wrote a script about that, and it got pretty far. I got on iFeatures and did several schemes. But there was a mistake somewhere down the line. I did something I wasn't supposed to do. Took some advice that was bad advice, and that ended up falling apart. But then through that journey, I was talking to a lot of different producers and people about my life growing up as a Jehovah's Witness, and started to realise that people were kind of interested in that. And so, I went away and wrote Apostasy. Got on the next round of iFeatures and jumped through all those hoops and got that made.
And Apostasy is very... I actually see quite a few similarities in style, but in terms of genre and source material, so to speak, it's very different from Starve Acre, which, if I'm not mistaken, is based on a book. Mm-hmm. So how did you switch... it's a very glib question, but why did you decide to adapt a book as opposed to carrying on as you were making a documentary, essentially?
I was working on several things after Apostasy. I had 4 or 5 different scripts I was developing, and Starve Acre was the one that got the green light. Yeah, I was working with a good team of people. Tessa Ross, the producer, got the rights to the book before it came out. And she also had a lot of private finance that went into the project. So that was the one that got made, But I was a fan of Andrew Hurley's work. I was actually working on his first novel, The Lonely. I was adapting that with Film 4. But then Starve Acre came along, and I was more interested in the symbolic nature of that story, and I got into that. So I sort of jumped ship and made Starve Acre.
And then you're the screenwriter of Starve Acre, right? You took the source material and then you wrote it for film. As a writer-director, how much power over the final film do you have? Where are the obstacles in the kind of line of production, I guess?
You have quite a bit of power. You got to choose your battles, I think. It depends at what point of the process, though, as well. In the screenwriting, you got a lot of power, and you can go away and do what you want, and as long as you defend it, you're okay. The production's tricky, things can go wrong, and you've got to choose what you're going to fight for. And then it depends what your producers are like, and how much flexibility there is there, how much money there is in the contingency, and you've got to pick your battles, I think.
Fair enough. There's one question I like asking all our guests, pretty much, is what does an average day look like as a writer-director? So Luna, how about you? Or even an average day on set, I guess, because there's a lot probably in between where you just live your life and you're not writing, directing.
Yeah, it really depends on what part of my journey, because there's been multiple times where I've just worked full-time in between all of my work and then just had to quit. Even before my feature, I was working in a garden centre. I've worked a lot of jobs in between. But at the moment, a lot of bed rotting, I won't lie. A lot of probably feeding the mild scoliosis demon inside of me, which is probably what happens most of the time. But I am quite lazy, like I've said, I'm really lazy. And I'm like that when it comes to writing. I'm really not the Mark Wahlberg type-esque where like I wake up at like 4 a.m. and then go do exercise and then I write and then I meditate and then I like feed the demons by doing nothing at all. And so I spend a lot of my time, not doing much at all, because I find it really hard to like force creativity. Like I just can't. I don't know, I will incubate ideas for almost like 2 years, like have things and scenes and puzzles of just the worlds that I'm thinking of that are just swimming around, and these characters are a bit like, it's like being like Whoopi Goldberg in Ghost. Like you have them just talking to you all day long, all of the time, and you're just like, shut up, leave me alone. And then all of a sudden your producers are like, and like, well, have you done any work? And then that's when I have, the 2 years of incubating, I sit down and all of a sudden I just become this sort of psychic antenna for that thing to just come out, and I never have. It's a bit like Erna Kazan, like automatic writing. I never remember even writing the story in the first place. And that wasn't the question, but most of the days I don't do a lot. Really, I struggle with my purpose on earth and read and eat too much toast and sugary tea and watch films and read and try and walk my demons out again, exercising them on the leash of life. But yeah,
fair enough. That sounds great. Do you feel that after making Hoard and it being critically acclaimed, do you have any pressure on you from producers and the like to make more work?
Yeah, I feel like killing myself. No, I do though. Yeah, I do feel the pressure. But I don't know. I feel like on both sides of the coins. I almost don't care, and part of me just wants to run away and become a carpenter. But I know that the demons would be calling me back to my desk to write, and I just have to do it because it's the only thing that I know how to do, and I don't have anything else to fall back on. And it's also, film is my breakfast, lunch and dinner. Like it's what I always come back to. It's my escapism from life and everything. So it is, I guess I'm just gonna have to keep on doing it and just seeing what comes out. But I do feel that way all of a sudden. Yeah, I do.
Fair enough. Thank you very much. Daniel, how about you? Average day in the life of a writer-director?
It's not dissimilar. I mean, I'm in this position where I'm trying to come up with a new idea, and I have been working on a project that's like I'm a few months into it now, and I've not written a script, a page yet of the script. But I'm okay with. I tell myself I'm okay with that. It's world building. You're trying to design the where you're going to set this story or who these characters are, and you end up doing a lot of research and reading and watching, and I'm okay with that now, and you can be lying in bed in the morning and saying just get up and do something, but you're lying in bed and an interesting idea comes to you, and when you're at the desk trying to force it, nothing comes out, and it's so I've worked things out now. I realize if I go and have a cold shower for 20 seconds, all of a sudden I get a bunch of interesting things come to me. Go for a walk, simple stuff, and you're all building up to this moment, I think, that does come eventually. You got to get yourself into a flow state, I find, that you put together a sort of playlist of music, and you finally worked out what your characters are, what they're doing and why they're there, and then you just eventually at some point you sit down and it just comes out, you vomit it out, and that's the first draft.
Thank you very much. I'm aware I've been speaking for quite a bit and we've only got an hour, so I want to give the floor to the audience because that's what we're here for our members to ask questions. Yes, please, and then I'll come to you. First row.
I was curious to ask how. Okay, let's say you have you're working on a project and you come up with a script, and how do you deal with the moment of great impatience where you feel like you have the film in your mind and you really want to make it, and then there is a lot of wait and a lot of green lights to be waiting, and you just really want to go and do it, and maybe you will be tempted to I mean, it's my case where I would be tempted to just say, I'll do it with nothing and I'll just go and yes, I really personally struggle a lot with that, cultivating that kind of patience, and I'm very curious to know what's your insight about it.
I'm a very impatient person too. But I also feel like nurturing the rest of your life outside of it is what will keep you sane, and that film used to be my everything. It is why I breathe. But then you always have to come home to something else. And I feel like that's what keeps me sane, is making sure that my life is not just escapism into, because it's so easy when you live in these worlds in your heads and these stories, it's so easy to escape and stay in them for so long and not leave the house. And, you know, if you enjoy it as well, you know, it's a bit like default mode network, you know, like Tolkien, like you have these worlds that you go to that keep you safe. But I think really nurturing the rest of your life, so you don't feel like you're in limbo, that you feel like that's not your, even though it is your heartline and the string of why you're beating and waiting. I feel like for me, making sure that I have a good solid plan. I'm an introvert as well, so making sure that I have plans to see people and like going to see films, going to galleries, that, you know, you're not just holding on to that one thing. And Cher also said, if you want time to slow down, do a plank. And that made sense in my head, but now it doesn't quite make sense in my head. So I'm not going to say anymore. But
I think it depends what you are in your career as well. Like, is this going to be your first film?
Second. But the first was done all that way, which shut a lot of doors in terms of distribution, of course, because I didn't cultivate any relationship with sales or productions, and it was just done with crowdfunding. Yeah.
That's probably a good step then, maybe, to sort of develop. I was going to say that, you know, if you've got a great idea and you believe in it, you've got to rally the troops and find people who are going to help you out and sort of create a buzz and energy behind, so it gets moving. You know, it's a machine, and if you do let it slow down, it can sort of die off. And you're the only person in the world who's going to do anything about it. You know, you've got to generate interest and get people on your side. And then if you really believe in it and nothing happens, you know, I probably would eventually go out and shoot something myself if it got to that bad, you know. But I'm in a different position now. I've got 2 films and I can find other things to work on while I'm waiting for things to...
Just ask, how long was the wait between the moment when you started approaching production companies, sales, etc., to the moment when you actually got to shoot it? How long in between?
Apostasy was pretty quick because I applied to iFeatures 3, I think it was. I can't remember. It probably was about 1.5 years, but it was all through a scheme, so there was never any downtime on that. Star of Acre was a little different because that was with a producer, but again, she had sort of private finance in place, and BBC was there to support me, and so that ended up taking about 2 years to get made.
Yeah, I think I'm a bit of an anomaly case because it happened pretty fast as well for me. And I think it was because of establishing them kind of relationships with my shorts. Mm-hmm. Really, with like BBC and Film 4 and BFI, like all of these systems that, you know, can create these machines to move faster in this country in particular, that I think because of my shorts and how my shorts did at festivals, it kind of allowed that feature process to speed up. And also was quite not lucky, but we were one of the first sort of post-COVID productions, and there wasn't as much as a backlog at that time because there wasn't a lot of things in development that they thought were also, I think, probably capable of just going to shoot afterwards. But where mine films pretty much took place in 2 houses and then some streets, it was quite a contained production which worked for that time and space as well. So it very much was sort of like, you know, Orion's belt, like everything kind of aligned very fast and then moved very fast. And So that's kind of how that happened.
Thank you
for
very
me,
much.
yeah.
Thank you. Question in the third row, please. Thank you.
Hi guys, loved both your films this year. I was wondering about both of your debuts are incredibly personal to both of you, and what did you find easier, the directing or the writing of both of your first features?
Directing, probably. Writing's always the hardest bit, to get anything out on the page and to tell yourself that it's good as well. Apostasy was really difficult. I mean, I couldn't do it at first. I didn't know how to do it. I eventually sort of figured out a way to get into the characters' heads and to sort of open up that, my childhood. That was really difficult. So directing was a hell of a lot easier, so, especially because I knew the world as well. I knew what these characters, why they were doing what they were doing, so it was very easy to sort of talk to the actors about that. So by far, the writing was much more difficult.
I don't know, I suffer with both and I adore both, but I'm a bit like James McAvoy in Split when I'm writing. I'm like talking to myself and I'm like acting out these moments when I'm writing. I'm like, no, don't love me. And I'm just feeling all of them things like they're feeling them. And sometimes I would be in tears and filming myself. I hope that footage never finds its way out when I'm just like, just crying to myself, writing this thing that I'm exercising out of me. But there's nothing that feels more... I never feel more sexy than when I've written something or I've made something. I'm like, God, I feel hot. I feel really... This is what it means to be hot right now, is when I finished writing something or made something, which is the reward of just exercising something out, that something wasn't there, writing yourself out of things. And I do have moments that are a bit, I think, irrationally I suffer because of the split thing that happens when I do write. But then filming, I love the chaos of that storm. I thrive in trauma. I thrive in them spaces where I don't have to actually think about myself. But then I also feel so guilty, like when people have to act traumatic things. I'm like crying under the cloak, like, oh my God, I'm a sadist. And I leave set sometimes, I'm like, I'm a sadist. I'm like, I'm an awful human. They love it. They come off, they're like, this is the best day ever. The actors are like, I've never got to go to them places before. And I'm like, thank you. Thank you so much. So there's days of just overwhelming stress and guilt from putting actors through them things, even though they love it because they're crazy.
Picking up on that, actually, are there any points, and this is coming from a complete newbie, I don't know, I'm not a writer or a director, where whilst you shoot, you go back to the script and then change things because you realise that something doesn't quite work, because something with the actors doesn't quite work?
Yeah, well, I was doing that every day on Star Acre, you sort of realise... There's so many things that could happen. I mean, you end up shooting a scene later in the film and you change something in that scene because you realised on the day it was better that way. And then a week later you go, hang on a sec, now the first half of your script doesn't make any sense now. So you've got to go away and rewrite it, and sometimes you have to reshoot scenes, so that can happen. And that's... on Star Acre, I was having so much trouble with the weather was killing us, and props weren't turning up on time and all sorts of things, so you end up spending all night rewriting your scripts.
I don't actually rewrite for anything. No, that would really make me feel ill. I mean, I rewrite dialogue and stuff, like there's definitely a lot of that happens because sometimes I don't like to rehearse either, so the only sort of scenes that I rehearse are either choreography, like intimate scenes, or technical things, like if I'm doing in-light changes or any kind of effects in the camera, like live when I'm shooting. Otherwise, the thing... Wait, what was the question again? Sorry, I have ADHD.
If there's a point at which when you're shooting you think, actually that bit in the script doesn't quite work, and you go back to the script and then you change it. Yeah.
I mean, dialogue mainly, if something makes me cringe as well and it doesn't feel natural. And it's such an intense feeling, isn't it, to know that you're on the clock and you have to make something feel sincere and part of that story and still feel natural. And, you know, the clock's ticking and you're like, I have to figure this out. I'm the only person who can figure this out right now. And there definitely are moments where that constantly happens and sort of polymorphs on the set. And like you, like if props don't turn up, if the logistics of something that you didn't have time to rehearse goes haywire, you really have to figure a way to adapt. And most of the time I will create a sort of list of things that I feel like could possibly go wrong for that scene before I shoot, so I have, I don't know, things to fall back on. And that's why I storyboard all of my film, not because I plan to shoot that way, but just in case it's not organic and it's not happening, I need something to fall back on. That's why I quite like having a storyboard that they're the worst. Everyone looks at my storyboards and sets and goes, is that me? And the actors just walk off going, okay, yes, that's what I look like to you. But I do think that's something like really planning them sort of things of what could go wrong. It's like Final Destination. It's like I must figure out every single, luckily I have ADHD and I'm an overthinker, because you have to think of every possibility of what could go wrong or what could be said or what could happen on that day. And so you have a list of sort of things to facilitate that.
Yeah, it makes sense, a bit like a safety net, really.
Yeah.
I think if there's something wrong with your scene, it gets found out somewhere, right? Now, hopefully you find it out before you go to shoot, but sometimes you're on set and the actors pick up on it, or if they're a good actor, a friendly actor, they'll offer you options, and sometimes they figure out for you as well. It's not, sometimes it's a small thing, it's just a glance, or the dialogue needs to be a different way around or something, you know. And yeah, good actors can normally see where if it's not truthful in some way.
Yeah, you don't have all the answers as well. I feel like, especially if you don't have, you know, as the writer director, you are the least experienced person on set. Everyone else is part of this travelling circus where the electricians or hair and makeup are going in and out all year long, whereas we wait 3 or 4 years to be on set most of the time in the feature film world. So you are the least experienced, and I feel like going into that alleviates you of so much of, you know, because everyone expects you to be the ringleader, but actually there's a lot of people to lean on in the feature arena that, you know, whether it be your producers or actors, and sometimes hair and makeup will have read the scripts. You know, I had this amazing assistant called Carla who now does casting, and she was like, I spent ages reading the script last night, and she'd just tell me things, and like getting to talk about it with every part of the team and making it feel as much as theirs as yours. It alleviates this kind of that it's just you in this, because a lot of the time you are just told you're the writer director, but you know, you are as much as a cog in the machine as everybody else, really.
That's such a good point. It's true, because you'll be the one person who doesn't actually get to be on set all the time, whereas technicians, people involved in costume, hair and makeup, they go from one film to the other, this is your film, so you won't be making one every 6 months. That's a really good point. Thank you. Do we have any more questions? Got a few gentlemen there, and then I'll come to you in the row. Just before.
I'm just curious to know how you became directors, because I can imagine in the writing process you rewrite, and to get your film funded, there's people that have a tuppence to throw in as you're refining that script. But what prepares you to direct for the first time? What support or help? How do you just go from never having directed to directing at that level?
I don't think anything ever prepares you for it, really. And yeah, all I know is that I know no one could direct my words or my world. That's all I know, and that is my sort of lifeline of, even when I've had as less confidence as ever. I mean, when I did my first short, I couldn't even, I mean, I can't still sometimes, but I couldn't go up to the counter if I ordered the wrong sandwich and correct someone. I was like, how am I going to direct a film? But knowing that you don't have to be like the megaphone person on set, that actually you can be quite a quiet person, or people will facilitate you if you're awkward. I always say that I still have really bad mental health, but I didn't know how to cope with it at all when I made my first short. And I always talk about that because I think people assume that you that you're just so focused, and that there's a certain type of person who makes a film like that exists that can do that and manage that. But actually I've had like PTSD on set like the whole time shooting, and I still managed to get through it. And I always tell people that, because you know, you constantly are fighting them battles as any other job, and that I don't think anything ever prepares you for it. And every time you do it, it's like having a panic attack. It's like doing it for the first time. It's so alien and such a not normal job either, that when you're a writer-director, you spend 99.9% of your time alone and alone with your white noise, and then all of a sudden you're like a psychological conductor. You're an orchestra of so many people, and I think it just is like jumping out of a plane. It just happens, and suddenly you just know what to do or how to do it, but I'm not sure it gets easier.
Yeah, I think that's why I ended up making a personal film as well for my first film. It's just because that's what you know, and so it is an easier way into directing, right? There is an authority there, and people trust you on set. I think it would have been a hell of a lot harder for me to try and make it a genre film first off, you know. And I think that works out for the better that way, you know. I managed to tell a personal story. But before that, you know, I was directing lots of music videos, just my own stuff, and painting a lot, and so I guess I was preparing myself for it in some way. But yeah, when you get on set, you are just putting out fires a lot of the time, and it's really hard to hold on to sort of creative space, you know, to find time to get that kind of truthful performance, or to come up with a new idea. That is so difficult, and I think it's because I had that life experience, that it made it easier for me to begin with. But it was a lot harder on my second film though.
Interesting. Thank you very much, and thanks for the question. Yes, I had a question. Yes. Yes. Sorry, I can't count the rows. Thank you.
Hi. Question to you, actually, Luna. How much of Hoard was scripted? Because it's so messy and raw, and actually, how married are both of you to your scripts when you're shooting?
God, I think
you've partly answered this, but I'm going to ask again.
I mean, I think a lot of people think that a lot of my stuff's improvised because of the dialogue, but again, that's why it's so good being like James McAvoy and Split. It's because I've had them conversations so many times with myself. I'm not, and I am. I mean, I sort of split my scripts and films into two tones, where I call it like the Alan Clark world, which is the grounded, which is the dialogue world, where I'm not too fussed on how I will shoot certain things, because I want that to feel natural and handheld, and I want it to feel human. And then there will be my more like absurd moments where I've really technically like prepared that scene and choreographed it, and really want it to look and feel a certain way. And I think it's sort of striking the balance between that, so that actors can sort of go to them spaces and it feel really collaborative, but also make something that feels a certain way. But I am quite married to my script. But in terms of dialogue, I mean, Sarah, my lead, she only had the first 20 pages of the film, which is her younger version, and the only other scenes that she had were her intimate scenes, so we choreographed them with like an intimacy coordinator. But the rest of the film, she had no idea what was really coming, and would sort of get sides on the day, or dialogue, or places and marks to hit. And there was a lot of shooting where, I mean, even the food fight scene, she had no idea it was happening. I just was like, you'll just know what to do when it happens, or you'll feel something will be said, and you know where you're going to end up. And it was just like this real animal play between me and her, and same as the girl who played Larib Deba Hekmat had no idea where her character was going or what the days were. And that's working with non-actors as well sometimes, is that some of them just don't fit that format, and that a skeleton is kind of easier for them to go off. But yeah, it depends.
Interesting. Thank you very much. Do we have more questions? Yes, quite a few. Same row, and then I'll come to you, gentleman at the back. Thank you.
What's been your favourite scene that you've written and why?
Oh, probably the naughty ones. God. Do you know yours? I know in my short Shagband it's the tree scene where they snog and he cuts his rat's tail off for her. That's my favourite scene in my short. And then Hoard, I think the bullfight scene, although it was one of the hardest scenes to shoot, and me and Sarah, my lead, we cried because she got knocked in the nose. I shut my foot under the door and we went and cried on the trampoline for 10 minutes in the garden, and we lit for day and it was 1 o'clock in the morning, so we were shooting it for quite a while, and we sort of entered a delirium as that happens on splits, but probably them two right now.
I don't know, for me. I'm quite proud of Apostasy, the scenes where there's like sort of break the fourth wall and have the characters praying and explaining what's happening in the scene to God, but you also see the scene playing out around them as they're talking. That was something I came up with quite early on, and it was a real battle for me to convince the execs to let me do it, and I had to then go and I had to workshop it with different actors and shoot it, and had several meetings explaining why this was going to work, and so when I watch it back now, there's a couple of scenes, the one at the beginning, midway through, where I'm like, yeah, see, it does work, I was right. So yeah, I'm proud of those.
Thank you. And yes, gentleman at the back.
Oh, hi. Sorry. So yeah, I actually have two questions, if that's okay. So the first question is more of an open-ended question. It's, do you have any advice for self-taught filmmakers? And the second question is, are there any resources that you'd recommend for script writing? Sorry.
Thank you. Advice?
Depends again where you are in your journey. Are you at the beginning? I don't know, man. You'd have to shoot some short films. I think that's what I would do. Try and apply for the. Are there any short film funds open at the moment? I don't know, but if there are, apply for them. If you don't get into it, then I'd go out and make it yourself, and get it into festivals, and that will open doors. Yeah.
I think just watch films and just keep watching them and keep watching them and keep watching them and keep falling down rabbit holes. And when you like someone or you like their performance, fall down their rabbit hole, which leads you to something else, fall down that rabbit hole, and really create a catalogue for yourself of things that you like and you like the feel of and you like the tone of. And I'm sort of always chasing a feeling or a tone or something that I would have probably wanted to discover on Putlocker at age 14 whilst bunking school. So whatever that Putlocker bunking school thing is for you, hold on to it like a pearl in an oyster and just keep trying to hunt down more films that make you feel that way. And soon enough you'll have this understanding of what it is that you kind of want to make and that feeling of that kind of thing you want to make. And then keep going to these things, because that's all I did. I didn't really have a lot of friends in my teenage early 20s because I was working so much, and I worked in CEX, which is quite a good library of film and my clerk's education. But I used to come to loads of these things and think, what is the point of coming to these? I was like, what? And then I'd leave these things and I'd walk around the streets of London and I'd be like, I have an idea. I have a feeling. That's the one thing that someone said has sparked something off inside of me and makes me want to go see a film the next day. And I think it is just really, if it's enough for you when you're alone with it, then that's how you got to make something, is that it's enough for me that when I write things, they're just mine and that's my world. But in terms of resources, I would have said short flicks because it was one of the first and the best and the most unusual of schemes that I wish still existed. But now you have sort of BFI Network, which is it is difficult without a producer to get onto network. It is kind of like an alien language that I can't even decipher if I'm submitting something, to be honest. And so what you really need to do is write something, feel it, and then try and find a producer who has similar tastes to you, which can be hard, but you can always meet them at things like this, you know, and get onto programs like BFI Network, the actual program that happens during LFF, and there's Film London. I'm trying to think. I think there's something called United Kingdom, but I might be wrong. But that's all I can think of at the top of my head at the moment for shorts.
I think Rain Dance used to do quite a lot of sort of mixing events and networking events and so on, where you would meet writers, you would meet producers if you needed one, etc. But don't quote me on that. I don't know if it's still running. But we'll have time to chat in the bar afterwards. I'm sure people will have ideas to share. Do we have any other questions? I don't know how we're doing for time. We all right? Got thumbs up. Yes, question at the back. 1 and 2 also at the back. Thank you.
Thank you. This is strictly for the writing piece for both of you. When you're starting a script from scratch, how many drafts do you typically do? And how do you know when you're done?
I'm never done. It's always changing the script, even during production. There comes a point where, the money's in place. It's usually based around an actor, their availability, and the film has to go. And I mean, before that, there comes a point where producers are happy with it, and you end up doing. Again, it depends on the project, but I think on Apostasy, I maybe did about 25 drafts of that, before iFeatures said it was good enough to go. Star of Acre, I think I did about 15 drafts of that before they sent it out to any actors.
Oh, I have a bit of a different process. I don't know about you, but I just can't write a script. I always say that writing the script is sort of like the mathematical part of my brain. It's like quite calculated, whereas I have to write the story first. So when I write the story, that's how I stay in like the flow state, because if I'm on a script, I'm jarred. It's like control D, action, shot, cut to, and all of them like cuttings out of actually writing the story happens on whatever script program you're using. So I always write the story, which has all the beats, all the feeling, and a lot of the times dialogue woven in, so almost like a short story. So for Hoard, it was 20 pages, and there was a vomit draft of that, and then I refined that, and then I did a vomit sort of skeleton of the script. And then which is just putting everything in, every beat, every feeling and prose from the story into the script. And then I sort of polish it and refine it so it works as a script. And so there's probably about 2 drafts each of the story and the script. And then I never really do more than 4 or 5 drafts, but there probably is like hundreds in there, but I never name them that because it's usually I'm just pulling or editing. I sort of, after the second draft, I'm just editing things and twitching and sewing and pulling out and putting little bits in, but it never really changes massively. But then, like you, up until the point of shooting, I think it's coming more with more experience now, is that I feel more comfortable to change things up to shoot, whereas I felt like I had to be very like puritanical and abide by the rules for a long time. But now I'm like, I can change this the day before tomorrow. No one's gonna get me.
I think I'm similar as well at the beginning of the process. On Apostasy, we had a false start. I did like 5 drafts of a version of a story, and just I didn't know what I was doing because it was my first script, and I was sort of following advice online and things I'd heard on a podcast, and it was really formulaic and shit. And but luckily iFeatures said, come on, let's try and figure this out. And so I did go into a kind of flow state, and similarly I decided to just I couldn't figure out how to get into the story, and so I decided to just write a diary from the main character's point of view. And that became the document I submitted in the end. It was like a 50-page document, but it was all from her point of view, and then it would switch characters at the right point. And so it was really a way into like the truthfulness of the story, and it was the only way I was able to break away from, you know, screenwriting advice or sort of cliches that you've realised later you've just borrowed from another film somewhere. So yeah, that's something I always do now, and I did that on Start of Acre as well, and it's an easy way to get into writing as well, just to start a sort of diary POV document.
Interesting, thank you. We had a question also in the last row. I think that was yes.
Hello. What's the best and worst part about your job?
I'd say the best part is meeting people. It's true, because I'd never had...
Not for me.
No, not in the way that we were talking about at like networky things, not like that. But I mean the people that I work with and collaborate with, like my actors and all my departments that I work with, is that I didn't go to university and I was never really around so many people. So I'm just sort of looking for connection, which is what I'm looking for in my films, is people who see me and film me and feel the same way. And that's what I'm looking for with all of it. I just really want that school trip feeling of, you know, every school trip is so different, but you adore it and you don't want to leave it when you're in it. And there's nothing that is the equivalent to a school trip other than making a film. It really is. Like, shooting for me is like this circus of just people and their lives, and it's this romantic bubble of, it's not reality, but it's so great. And so I think that's my favourite part of it. And then the worst part of it, so much. So much. I think it's quite lonely. Yeah. I think that's it. And even if you can spend a lot of time with yourself and you love that, which I do, there is a lonely element to it as well, where you don't feel seen at all, and you have to jump through a lot of hoops like we were talking about, and you have to deal with a lot of people who don't understand where you're from or why you want to tell stories and how much it is your soul, and having to regurgitate a lot of your insides to just, I don't know, it's hard working with people who are on big salaries and don't understand that you're in limbos in between projects. It's really hard having to humanise that experience for some of them people in them positions and understand that you are living on not so much and having to carry that load on top of, you know, wait until you shoot, like that limbo of time that can be really hard to navigate if you don't have anything else to fall back on, and having to live on them ifs or coulds or buts for months, if not years. And I think that is hard, but also the more that I do it, the more I'm like nurturing again outside of my life of film. That, you know, is what keeps me sane at the moment.
I think for me, it's like there's a buzz, right? A creative buzz you get when you make something and you see it back and you think, yes, I've got it right, or it's close. And yeah, cinema's like the ultimate version of that, you know. There's nothing better than going to the cinema and watching a film that's moved you, you know, and you aspire to that. You aspire to a certain kind of greatness, something that you could see on screen with lots of people. And so that's what, yeah, I'm always thankful I have that opportunity, that, you know, and that's what I hold on to. I'm like, one day maybe I'll make that kind of Oscar-winning film, or, you know, something that really connects with people. And that, yeah, I kind of live for that buzz now. That's what it's about. And yeah, the bad side is the kind of loneliness and the weight and the struggle and all that stuff, you know. So it took me like 7 years between Apostasy, I think. Oh, maybe it was 6 years, Start of Acre. And yeah, it's just getting harder and trickier to make feature films these days.
I had a question about that, because I've always wondered as well, when you're a filmmaker, how how do you live between projects? Or what do you do? What do you just go back to a day job? What happens? Do you notice maybe that now you've got those films under your belt? Do you get offered projects? Do you get offered to just work on someone else's film, for example, as a co-writer maybe, or in any other position?
I've fallen in love for the first time, so it's a great filler of time. Highly recommend.
Congratulations.
It's a great filler of time. Great distraction. Love it. If you can do that, do it. So that's been great. And again, it is like nurturing your life outside of it, which has taken me a long time for it not to just be film, and sometimes realising that film has been escapism for me in maybe not a healthy way. But I think because of perhaps, I hate the word aesthetic, it actually makes me feel really nauseous. But it just sounds horrible in your mouth, doesn't it? It sounds like a medical procedure. I'm just imagining myself being bandaged up or being unravelled. That I feel like I've got a particular style, so no one ever offers me anything, which I'm actually glad, because I can't direct anyone else's script, so I'd be bloody useless. But I feel really lucky that I've got to do a couple of music videos this year, which is great. It's great being on set and being able to experiment and create something really fast, and also meet other people in different departments. You know, you're always trying to find your collaborators, the ones that you want to end up with, you know, your Eco to your Coppola, like these people that really just harmonise with you. And I've discovered some of them people, and it's been really nice filling in some of them gaps with these creative, fun projects that, I mean, are equally as stressful as a feature, I won't lie, because they come with other responsibilities. But it's been really nice to experiment and just be creative again, like, and it not have the same pressure, that it's all of you and represents all of you, which has been really lovely. But we're filling the time. I don't know, boy oh boy, just watching films really.
Yeah, I'm the same, watching films all the time, and you know, I'm getting sent stuff. I read scripts and reading books all the time, trying to find the next thing that works, you know. And that ends up, before you know it, a couple of years can go by. You know, it takes time as well, writing and reading, and but then, you know, you just got to have I think you said that earlier, it's a well-balanced life. You got to be doing other things as well. And you know, currently thinking about setting up a campsite maybe, and I don't know, getting into food as well. I'm into sauces.
Wow.
Yeah. I decided I'm doing all the Christmas sauces this year, so I've been reading recipes for bread sauce and red cabbage, that kind of stuff.
Nice. Thank you very much. How are we doing for time? Yeah, we need one question. One question. No pressure. Just one there at the front. Thank you very much. If you don't mind just waiting for the mic to get to you. Yeah, just there. Thank you.
I don't want to depress everyone too much, but one of the biggest topics of conversation in screenwriting at the moment is AI. And I wondered if you had any thoughts on that. Could it be a potential useful tool, or is it just the screenwriter's apocalypse now?
Oh, good question. Okay, AI.
I hate it. I'm joking. No, save it for the medical fields. You know, it doesn't belong in the creative world. But then perhaps maybe one day it will. I don't know. Sometimes I see them AI worlds that people have churned out on Instagram reels that actually look fabulous. And I wouldn't mind guiltily, even though it's sucking up our water systems and polluting our earth, can't help but be hypnotised by it sometimes. I think I don't know what to say, because maybe I shouldn't have said that, but I do sometimes when I see them. And that I think when people use it in a way where they churn their own being into it, like perhaps program it with their complete maybe if we could plug it into us, then maybe it would feel worth it. But at the moment, no. I think we're the most illiterate we've ever been, so I think we need to get back to the books and go into the cinema a lot so that doesn't die. And computers can't create feeling. It can't create, I don't know, a tone that makes you feel seen. It can make you, I don't know, it's a bit like fast food, isn't it?
Quick fix.
It is, yeah. But it's not full, it's not wholesome, it's not full of life.
It doesn't have the specificity, does it?
Not yet. But it's aging fast.
I think there's already a kind of gap, isn't there, between like commercial cinema and more artistic, director-driven work. And I think AI will just, that gap will expand because of AI. I was watching an interview. It was some big Hollywood director, Zack Snyder or somebody, just come out of seeing he'd just experienced the latest AI tool in filmmaking, and it's just an input. You just say, I want to see this huge battle taking place, and it just within seconds creates this full sequence that would cost 20-30 million quid to make, and it's just there instantly. And he was talking about in the future, it'll be a home entertainment service where you can just put a line of dialogue in and it'll generate a whole film for you. And he was like saying even further on, then it would be your entertainment system would already know what kind of film you would want to watch based on your algorithms, and so you wouldn't even need to say, just sit down and a film would be there in front of you. But then it would be so sort of like mainstream and like candy flossed that I still think even then in the future you'll want like author driven, like personal real stories. And yeah.
Nice note to end it on. Fair point. Thank you so much. No, that's good. It's hopeful. Thank you. Thank you so much to our audience. Thank you very much to our guest. Big round of applause to Daniel and Luna. Thank you. And I invite you to go to the bar, have a drink, have a mingle, chat to each other, and have a wonderful evening. See you next time.